That's almost brutal. Weather report, April 15th, 2021. So, how you guys doing? I'm
doing fine. How about you?
I'm in shock. I can't believe anybody could be as simple-minded as John Maddox and still manage to put together these amazingly long sentences with real words in them. Did you hear the part where he went off about he was going off about coding templates and AI and body plans and shit like that? Oh my god, he wanted to force you into the body plan thing real quickly. He mentioned it a couple times, but then the first topic was historical science, and I don't know. So,
well, you're skipping a few minutes of the show before I joined.
Yeah, I didn't listen to too much of that. So
we gotta make the point that that if you actually scroll back to before I joined, you might catch on to the reason that I joined. And in fact, I make a joke about it as soon as I unmute. And then you'll notice that I had in fact violated my one rule about joining this type of stream. And it's my own fault, really.
Okay. What was the rule? Or do you know?
Confirm with the host what I get to talk about before I join.
Oh, okay.
I'll talk about anything after I get my guaranteed subject in.
Right.
But I'm doing that first. And that's my rule, and I didn't do it this time, and it's my own fault. Lesson learned.
So whereabouts was you came in at, did you come in at 55?
Just put it like 5 minutes or so before I join. That's probably fine.
Okay, so about 50, okay, 49. We'll try here, and we'll see what happens.
Then Bird joined, then Andrew. Now we're creating a little snowball effect here. So, Christopher, have you? What's your formal position on historical science?
Okay, so let's see. 5 minutes before you joined would be 45. Was this when SFT was talking, or?
And
should be, yeah.
Before you.
Okay, was it SFT spiel?
Answered that question. You said your speech or something. What was that? I think I missed it, brother.
He's got his mouthful of retainers.
Okay.
You guys are here
okay.
for an appointment today, so I want to join all these people, and because I don't know, it's been a crazy day, so I need to let loose tonight. If you know what I mean.
No problem. Hey, that's
what's up, Will? How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. What about you?
Oh, I'm in there, doing a little little impromptu YouTube action. Always gotta have some fun. So far, not having enough controversy. We're having some relatively well-behaved inquiries, differences of opinion, but not having any real. I mean, it's for the debate that didn't happen. So that means we're supposed to have a debate here, so the debate actually does happen because we want to actualize the
we can
dialogue that should have happened.
Well, because
we got
Andrew,
damn wish on that.
Give you some pushback, and also I hope your appointment went well, of course. But to provide some pushback on what you said, because I know we oftentimes focus on nested hierarchical patterns, homology, transitional forms, so on and so forth. But when we look to differentiating lines of evidence, those seem to be the lines of evidence that you're not quite interested in looking into. But when you look at these taxonomically restricted genes that evolutionists have no real explanation for, in order to explain them in a universal ancestry model, well, that poses some serious problems for your position of universal common ancestry. So that's why I think it is a good thing to look into, because genetics is the best way to determine ancestry.
Speed.
And if
Mute.
there's no explanation for how these taxonomically
Bennigan's.
restricted genes.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was just wondering what the hell is he talking about for a layman who doesn't know the real science, who now is having to interpret what somebody who doesn't know the real science either is saying.
Well,
orphans.
I'm sure you'll get to learn as soon as I join to discuss precisely those topics.
Okay.
Okay.
So he's talking
I'm
about
being sarcastic. You won't get to.
Oh, you. Oh. Yeah, okay. So he's talking about orphan genes, right?
Yeah, one of the things
so,
that scientists don't have explanation for. I'm not getting what he's saying about
we do have an explanation for it. That's part of the reason I'm going to talk about it. Just to knock this out really quickly. So orphan genes are assigned as being non-homologous on the basis of protein sequence. Generally speaking, they're homologous on the basis of the underlying genetic sequence. So there's not a problem. Right?
Okay.
Like that's the answer.
Frame shift.
No, it's not necessarily even a frame shift. Often you have, if you'll have, if you have spurious transcription, for instance, right? That's transcribed, but it's not translated, so it's not a protein. So we're not annotating it as such, and we're not talking about it. And so that's fine for a bunch of organisms, and then for the one where it is translated, there's protein now. So now we got to talk about that. And it's a novel gene, right? Well, yeah, it's a novel protein with respect to the fact that there hadn't been a protein like that in the prior generation. But the sequence was there, wasn't it? And of course, if you point out that the sequence was there, then they'll turn around and say, well, it's nothing new then, is it? It's not novelty.
Okay. Okay. So how many orphan genes does that account for?
That's a lot.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of orphan genes for one thing. Mostly because most annotation is not done on the basis of functionality, right? You do annotation programmatically,
right?
And so you'll end up annotating all of these genes, and you'll find a lot of them that are unique to a particular taxa, and you'll think, oh well, that's interesting. I don't see this gene in the sister taxa. I wonder why that is. And then if you look at the gene, often, not always, some of these are definitely functional. Some of them are doing important things, no question about it. But sometimes, often enough, it's just nothing. It's just an annotation, right? And sometimes, sometimes they are important. Sometimes it's just an annotation, and so you just have to understand the range of it. Also, common misunderstanding: the fact that it's doing something doesn't mean that it always needed to be there to do it.
Right.
I don't know why they can't grasp that extremely simple concept.
No, that would be new information, right?
Yeah.
And they couldn't admit to that. So, okay. Yeah. Should we play the rest of SFT?
This could come about through any series of mutations. Well, it's a huge problem for the common descent, but it's exactly what we would expect given the special creation model. So I would just say that, that there's, and with the chromosome 2 fusion as well, that's why the evolutionists predicted that there would have been a fusion event in the human line to begin with because of the difference in chromosomes. So if there never was a fusion event, I believe it was Dr. Kenneth Miller who said if there was no fusion event, then humans and chimps aren't related. So now that we have all these problems with the fusion event suggesting that there may not have been a fusion event, well, as Dr. Miller said, humans and chimps aren't related. So there's another differentiating line of evidence that would suggest universal common ancestry is false. So we could talk about nested hierarchies, homology all day, but these differentiating lines of evidence make universal ancestry, it refutes universal ancestry, it precludes it.
And that was where the chromosome 2 thing, was that where you also...
Well, that that, and it really disturbs me how people, how people take, scientific truth seriously. When they, when he talks about shit like this, and everybody's like, well, I don't understand it, therefore he must be right.
Yeah. Did you see, CRISPR? Did you see? Okay, one of the big things they have about the fusion site is that there's that highly functional gene there, DDX11L2.
Yeah, there's no demonstrated function.
Not only that, did you see the work I did on it? There's only it's only like part of that protein. I mean, it's like maybe 15% of the protein, and the rest of it is lopped off. What's that?
I wouldn't call it a protein. There's no.
Well, you wouldn't. Yeah. Okay, but I think it may be. I don't know if it's transcribed or not. But anyway, if you look at it,
it's transcribed. But well, okay. So
is it translated?
So the short transcript is definitely transcribed in at some low level in some cells at least.
Right, the first 3 exons.
Well, no,
or
it's
last
worse than
3
that because actually the long transcript is completely different. It is not. You wouldn't even call it the same thing, right?
Yep.
Because it's being transcribed from the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Right. The exons do not really line up well, and the transcription rate is much lower. It is enormously lower, right? And so basically, what we have is several exons going one direction that line up with everything else, including with various paralogs of DDX, right? And all of that makes perfect sense for this to be the DDX that we know it is. And then this other transcript just makes no sense at all. It's just, it looks like something randomly started getting transcribed occasionally, going the other way, right? Like but anyway, there's no evidence of any function for it anyway. They like to quote this resource that is supposed to be a functional annotation website, which looks really impressive if you don't know anything about biochemistry or functional annotation. But absolutely none of the things cataloged in it are actually functional.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, they don't show any function for DDX11L2, but the worst part about it is that 90% of the gene or 85% of the gene or the gene isn't there. There are DDX11 has like 8 or 9 motifs, or functional motifs, and most of those are missing. In fact, I think maybe all of them are missing, including
all of the DDX, the DDX 11Ls are that's what the L is for. It's like so these are all pseudogenes.
Yeah, and it's missing even the dead box motif, so it's not even strictly a DDX. So
that's why it's like. It's just like. But yeah, so anybody who says that this thing is demonstrably functional is either ignorant or lying. If Standing says that it's functional, he is
highly
actually
functional.
lying. He is actually lying at this point because it's been explained to him in sufficient detail that he should understand. And if he's saying it anyway, he is lying about the status of it, which is his business. But it's simply not true.
Yeah. Okay. So roll it, or shall we skip ahead?
Standing.
You can roll.
How do I know you're right? Do you have any PhD?
Oh my God.
Any PhD?
I have 35 PhDs, 25 of them are from Harvard.
Oh, yeah. I thought you had 50 at least.
No, I'm still working on the next 15. I got to catch up to Org. Because Org.
Right.
Did you watch that video I
Org,
sent
you're
you?
sitting at about 75, right?
I'm closer to 100 now, but thank you.
Oh, man. If you got 100, that means CRISPR must have like 200, because that guy, he knows it all. He's got it all figured out. Banana plants and whales are related. Why again, CRISPR?
Oh my God.
Yeah, sorry, somebody said chromosome 2 fusion a few times in a row and jumped into the room.
Hey, CRISPR, how are you?
Doing okay.
Oh, I know you've got.
And the worst part is I don't think anybody got the Beetlejuice reference.
So look at this. We got CRISPR. We got
Yeah.
Bird and Elf.
Yeah.
Well played.
Okay.
Where'd Will go?
Fuck Will.
There he
Yeah,
is, there
coming
he is.
to.
So
to
John,
deny the
here's
real
the
science.
here's the solid crew you're looking for.
Yeah, it only took almost an hour to get then Bird joined, then Andrew. Now we're creating a little snowball effect. Position on historical science versus observational.
Yeah, you'll notice that I made a.
What do you mean?
The first thing.
I mean, so-
the first thing I said. The first thing I said when I jumped in was I made a joke about why I was there. Right.
Yep.
Did we get to talk about it at all? Absolutely not.
No. Ever? Like for 6 hours?
Immediately, Maddox has got to oh, let's jump on this thing that I'm going to harangue about for like an hour and go nowhere, because we're not even talking about the same thing. Could have had a productive conversation with Standing that would have, evaporated from his mind the next day, but
Yeah.
instead we had this useless thing. But anyway.
Yeah. So the historical thing was mostly useless. Do we want to rehash it or talk about it or?
No, it was completely useless because I said what I said. I explained what I said. Potentially, I could have phrased it better when I said it in the first weather report the other week, but in context, I don't feel bad about what I said. Creationists represent this as though it's a huge problem, and it's not.
Yeah. Does anybody remember what that paper was that Maddox was reading on historical science, where he had the abstract up and he clipped it and then he quit reading at some point?
But he does make a point to note that he has the paper, the full paper, not just the abstract, but the full paper in his deep, well-organized catalog of papers, which is a concept that will come into play later when I repeatedly ask him to provide me with a reference that he talks about.
Right. Yeah. That is my biggest problem with that asshole, is he will not provide me with references. When he'll say, I was reading a paper, and it's like, wait a minute, I want to read it too. Right. It's like, and that was for what was his name? The guy, Nad, or do you remember the guy's?
Nick Hud. He gave the name Nicholas Hud at Georgia something University.
Yeah, and he's got about 120 papers, right?
Well, I mean, I started working my way through them as I had the time to do so, and I never came across any paper from that guy talking about the thing that Maddox was describing. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that Maddox can't describe papers he's read in a way that people can find them, which is, again, his fault.
Yeah. I could probably find the paper in his highly well-organized thing because I managed to track them by date. And it's probably a recent one. If he's talking about it, that means he probably just read it in the last week or so. But we could take a look.
No, but he's been talking about this for like a year and a half, though.
Oh, he has? Okay. So it's an old one. So, what is HUD's? Okay, it's NV HUD. Okay. Maybe I can find it. I might be able to find it in his folder if I take a look.
Yeah, it's Nicholas V. Hud from Georgia Institute of Technology.
Yeah, where's my Maddox folder? I lost my Maddox folder. God damn it.
Of course, it's also possible that he was remembering the wrong guy.
Right.
So I could have been looking at a bunch of articles from this guy, and he's not even the right author. So who knows?
Yeah. Okay, so where do you want to go with this? You want to jump ahead to? I think you guys started talking about body plans at some point. Was it? Okay, you're at 40, 45.
It's approximately an equally useless conversation.
Yeah. Let's see what we have at 103.
Experiment in relation to evolution, right? In terms of entirely new body plan formation and all these different things that we talk about all the time, is we're talking about massive differentiation between, in terms of, I'm talking about inference versus, oh, I did I did some experiments and I was able to see X, Y, Z happen over here. You're not doing any experiments that are showing full scale body plan formation. Yes or no?
All right. So this gets into the
so you're going into
about what a body plan
now
is.
you're going into inference to the best explanation versus actually observable science. And
He's still talking about observable science. But anyway, so how long do you guys talk about this? This is the part where I started listening, and the way he was responding to you. I mean, you're an actual scientist. And 9 months ago, Maddox was made a comment to Erica about lipids reproducing themselves. So obviously, he hasn't been studying this field very long. And I suspect you have been studying it for a while. and it just, I couldn't listen anymore to the amount of, I mean, what the?
Yeah, it doesn't get better.
No. Yeah, this is where I started listening in last night as well, because I was mostly working on a lab. Do you have the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's up to you guys what we do with this video, because I don't have a lot of bookmarks. I just started bookmarking it, because it takes time to do this shit.
This was about the part where you were talking about Neil Shubin and like the Sonic Hedgehog gene and stuff.
Actually, I think it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit later, actually.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, that was after I rage quit the stream.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wasn't even on there. I rage quit listening. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go watch Netflix. Fuck this stuff. I can't take it anymore.
I think Maddox was kind of misunderstanding what you were saying.
That's true. Oh, wait, you're gonna specify?
Well, I mean, like he was saying. So you were talking about like a specific deletion. And was it just some sort of like Sarcopterygian fish? I'm guessing like probably a lungfish or something.
No, I mean in mice. They did it with mice.
Oh, okay. Wait, so was it deletions in mice? Then how?
Well, it wasn't a full deletion of anything. It was a manipulation of a regulatory regime, and it wasn't. SHH was one of the other was upstream of what they actually knocked out. Again, I hadn't read this for a few years. It was FGFR. Now I forgot the number at the end. Anyway, so yeah, but it's same idea. Same idea. They're interfering with regulation or something, and with all of these regulatory genes, if you keep them on for a little bit longer, or you have them on for a little bit shorter, it changes the way things develop, and that's pretty easy to achieve by adjusting the affinity of the binding site.
Yeah. Well, isn't polydactyly just a Mendelian allele? Just a single site. So. Yeah. So I mean, you can have new limbs, I guess, quote unquote, developing.
So that's actually. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Yes, it's like I've also seen something interesting about the finger formation. Like if you perhaps remember, like how stripes form in animal patterns, for example, it follows the Turing pattern. It's called, which is basically a patterning formation that it occurs through what is called by an activator and an inhibitor interplaying with each other, and you get this stripy pattern from that. And basically, fingers are just a form of stripes. Weird. From the same mechanism, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you're considering embryology and how an organism develops, if you admit that a bone can get longer, right, with a small change, that's one dimension. There are three other dimensions. There's depth. There's X, Y, Z. There's three dimensions to development. And if a bone can get longer, then it can also some little process at the top can get longer there. And if you imagine turning a donut into a coffee cup by morphing it a little bit, that's what osteogenesis is in embryology. And not only that, but it's not only 3-dimensional, it's 4-dimensional because it's across time too. So it's how long these things remain. And then it gets worse from there because cells can differentiate in type. They can migrate, they can break up and migrate, they can re-stick to each other. They can also change their own shape by sucking in one end of the cell and expanding the other end of the cell, and you'll end up with a little loop or an organ. That's how your brain develops, basically. So I mean, there's all of these different, it's almost like a video game. And these guys will admit that a bone can get longer, but they don't understand that the very same kind of information can give you an entirely different structure. Mm-hmm. And then further, when a bone extends, the place where the muscle attaches to the bone is often controlled by the same set of regulatory mix. So you're going to end up with a muscle attaching to a very slightly different spot of a bone, or bone getting longer, and it gives you more leverage or less leverage, or the organism dies. Mm-hmm. So it's just so easy to understand, and they do not get how an embryo develops at all, and they cannot. They won't yield on this.
Yeah, embryology is so easy to understand. That's why we have hundreds of scientists trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
No, but I'm messing with you. But I mean, any of those small changes create selectable variation. And Maddox's response to whenever CRISPR pointed that out was really weird. It was like, would you rather... CRISPR basically said, like, you can change the regulatory elements and you'll have some sort of phenotypic change. And then Maddox basically just said something like, yeah, but would you want your child to have the phenotypic change? And it's like, who cares what you want? That's selectable variation. It's more about what the environment wants than what you want.
Yeah, and then the little argument about he wanted to use human babies as an example, and you said, why not use mice?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And I think I rage quit right around that area and went and watched Netflix.
Yeah, me too. Well, I stopped listening when they went on to like theology.
Oh, they actually got the theology too?
Yeah, the Bob dude started talking about theology or something.
So I don't know how much time Maddox is even worth spending. I was just so amazed, CRISPR, at your patience with him.
Yeah.
I don't know. And his lack of humility and his lack of understanding of what his place is in this particular field is, I mean, I don't think there's one of us here that doesn't fully understand how much we don't know. And
also, another thing interesting about Maddox is, I mean, per usual, his only arguments were like argument ad analogy, I guess.
Yeah.
So like CRISPR brought up like some sort of biochemical phenomenon. And then Maddox said, oh, so it's basically like, I don't know, like a T flip-flop or something. And then he would just scoff at it as if that's a response in any way. You know?
Yeah.
Also, Potentially didn't get that it was sarcasm when you said that the embryology is easy to understand. Yeah.
Huh?
Otangelo in the chat didn't understand that you were being sarcastic when you said that embryology was easy to understand.
Me or Speed?
Yeah.
Because I was being very sarcastic.
Otangelo didn't get it?
No. Didn't get it.
Yeah. Well, embryology is something I absolutely love. I believe that was where it was just become stunningly obvious how common descent is obvious. I mean, it happened. It is just so obvious.
From embryology, specifically?
Yeah, from embryology. Embryology will give you the best grasp of evolution that I think you can get.
I don't know. I prefer. I don't know. I'm preferable to like sequence data, but
yeah, that I want to tip my hat to that too. I have to, but it's just, you know, being able to see how easy it is for a fin to turn into a limb.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not easy, but you know, it takes a few steps. And then Maddox, he seizes on when you were giving him the steps you were saying there were multiple steps, CRISPR, then he sees on, oh yeah, and isn't that programming? It's like, no, not necessarily.
Yeah. So that was the point that I thought more than anything Maddox failed to grasp. But just so I think I haven't read the paper that CRISPR was talking about. Everything that I've heard about it was just, me repeating from what I heard last night. But what CRISPR was saying was like, if these specific mutations happened in this pathway, that matches what the fossil record was showing. It wasn't saying that like this had to have happened for, well, I mean, I guess it was like this had to have happened for this specific number of radii to develop.
Well, actually, that's not what I'm saying. So,
oh, really?
I have no idea how many different potential mutations could produce the same effect. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
This mutation produces that effect. Thus, we know that the effect can be achieved. That's right.
Yeah.
Like, what else do we have to say at that point? Okay, can this thing happen? Yes, it can.
Yeah.
Can we move on now?
Yeah, but the way he was trying to spin it was that like, oh, well, this happened in a lab with controlled conditions, therefore it wouldn't happen in nature, which I think is just a gross misrepresentation how like DNA replication works.
Well, also he's just wrong to say that it wouldn't happen in nature. Of course it would happen. I mean, this is just like not understanding population size.
Yeah.
Right? Like.
So what did he say about the HUD paper? What was his claim?
He's got this thing that he likes to go on about how they can't make nucleotides. They can't make oligos longer than 20 nucleotide.
Oh,
right. And I'm trying to figure out what is he talking about?
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. I'm trying to figure out what he's talking about.
Well, it's probably in his abiogenesis folder.
Because I think that he must be somehow talking about like you can't get more than 20 under some particular set of potentially abiotically plausible conditions or something. Because like the first few times I heard him say it, I thought he was saying we couldn't do it at all without polymerase, and that's just crazy.
Yeah.
But okay, so it's not what he's saying. He's talking about something different. Fine. Again, if he could learn how to talk coherently, and use the words that people in the field use, or at least if you don't know the words that the people in the field use, don't use big words that they don't use, because that just makes everybody confused. He just maybe talk like a normal person for once, and then his point would be clear to everybody. But he's unable to do that because, he's a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain to the audience for me? Yeah, exactly.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like the reason he does obfuscate by using so much programming analogy is because he knows that none of the people who actually do biological work understand it. So I feel like he can just throw out jargon and we all have to be like, so what do you mean by that?
But I just happen to be a programmer, and I can assure you John Maddox is not a programmer. He is not a fucking programmer.
Is his programming as bad as his biology?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's a little scary.
He's called a script kiddie. There's somebody who learns how to use some piece of software to create web pages for people, and that's all the work he's ever done on it.
Does he do HTML and JavaScript and think he's a programmer?
Yeah. He's a script kiddie. That's what he is. So, and then when he talks about, like the way he talked about Ruby on Rails one time, he doesn't even know the field. He doesn't even know the management part of the field, let alone knowing the field itself, right? Because you would never say that about, I think he compared Ruby on Rails to something else, Python, or there's something ridiculous. But and I caught that early on that he was faking that kind of knowledge. And that's pretty easy to do for a person that knows just a little bit about programming to snow everybody else, because programming is almost like the IRS. Nobody wants to fucking talk about it, unless you're a programmer. So
I love that term, Speed. I think we should take a vote and maybe start calling John that.
Script kiddie?
Script kiddie. Yeah, that sounds like a really good name.
Script
I like that.
Did you say Script Alpha?
Script Wolf is what I said.
Oh, okay. He could be the Script Alpha dog or Alpha Wolf, right?
Yeah, Script Alpha
Remember,
Wolf.
Yeah, what did they used to call him? Alpha Wolf or Alpha Dog?
It was Alpha Wolf.
Yeah, something.
Literally Alpha Wolf.
Literally called me Alpha Wolf. It's like, oh my God. What a bozo. Anyway. He popped in the other day when I was talking about gun control. Maybe he could pop in while we're talking about genetics. I don't know. He might be uncomfortable with this panel. I don't know. Anyway.
SFB Mod made a little appearance in the chat during the stream, I think. I saw him in there. Yeah, somewhere. I don't know if he was in there long. I didn't really watch a lot of this, so. But yeah, the part that I watched, he was in there. It might have been way towards the end, possibly. I don't know. He didn't jump. I don't know if he jumped into the stream. I don't think so, but he was in the chat though.
Well, Maddox in his folder has a paper called "The Difficult Case of RNA-Only Origin of Life," which is from 2019, but it's by Vey and Mutchler, something like that. But I couldn't find
who posted what
NV HUD. Huh?
You have a paper for me?
Well, this is it's in Maddox's folder. I think I can link it. Let me put it in private chat.
If you just copy the title, I can search for it.
Oh, okay. It's just about RNA world, and the difficulties. And I was just thinking that may be where he found it. Why can I not copy? What in the hell is going on?
Right. If you give me the journal name, the lead author, and the year.
Yeah, I'm trying. Okay. Shit. Emerging Topics in Life Sciences. Is that a journal? Portland Press. Hang on a second. Click on this link. This will work. Private chat.
I mean, really, just what's the lead author's name and the year?
Vey, LE space VAY, 2019. Is that how you store your papers too?
All right, I can probably find it from there.
Okay. Well, if you click on that link in chat, it'll pop. It'll go right to his webpage, I think.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Good.
Walker, I've seen your discussion with Jackson Reed the other day, and I listened to the whole thing. It was really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also remember I also remember when you mentioned our Twitter thing. I put something about the human evolution of bipedality, and then some random guy. I just ignore him.
But you saw that guy too, right?
yeah, exactly. I knew exactly what you were talking about, but I just said, no, not in the mood right now. Nothing.
I just thought it was funny because I checked his regular Twitter profile, and he just had so much stuff about the aquatic ape hypothesis. And I'm like, why is this dude so obsessed with the aquatic ape hypothesis? I mean, it sounds like, to me, it's strange for a scientist to have a pet hypothesis that they're just super, super deep into. But to me, it's even stranger for just a random dude to have a pet hypothesis about human evolution, I guess, that they're absolutely in love with. I don't know.
I have my own opinions. I for example, am more in favor of the human assisted bipedality as the precursors to human bipedality as opposed to knuckle walking precursor. But still, I'm still open to the possibility that we did indeed go through a knuckle walking stage. That's still, of course.
Yeah.
But the aquatic ape hypothesis is now no longer it's completely debunked. There's not a single fossil evidence to even suggest that we had a predominant stage in the water, which is interesting. I don't know if you remember, a long time ago, when it was a popular channel. I think it was the Animal Planet or maybe something else that put out a mermaid documentary. I don't know if you remember of any.
No, I never saw that.
Oh my god! There was a documentary. It's really strange. It was such a serious tone that it was really convincing to a lot of people, and it almost convinced me that mermaids were real. And I was like 13 at the time. I don't know, remember exactly when it was, but I was like 13 at the time. So yeah.
Yeah.
That was the target audience for that shit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I also definitely have my own opinions on a lot of that stuff, but you know, my opinions are pretty plastic when it comes to anything scientific. Like, I would be open to the aquatic ape hypothesis if there was data supporting it. Like, if there was a paper that came out, you know, next week that had compelling evidence in favor of the aquatic ape hypothesis, I wouldn't be against it, you know, I would consider it.
Against it, I actually, like, I don't know, like we have like members of our own lineage that goes almost back to like the common ancestor between us and the chimpanzees. So unless the common ancestor itself was aquatic too, then there is no chance for the aquatic ape.
Yeah, well, I will say the fossil record of humans is extremely sparse between, you know, whenever we diverged from chimps to about 3 million years ago. And then after that, it's like super resolved.
Is it Ardipithecus, like more like 4 million years or so?
Yeah, well, so we only have a few Ardipithecus specimen. So the one that people always cite as Ardi, I'm pretty sure is Ardipithecus animensis, but I might be wrong. I think
there's an older one like Sahelanthropus, or maybe something else was older.
There's some interesting stuff with Sahelanthropus though, and also we don't have very much Sahelanthropus fossils either. We have one fairly complete skull, which is what most of our I mean that's like the type specimen. That's what most of our, like, I guess, inference comes from. And then we have some like femurs and like some other, you know, body bones, I guess, that we're not fully sure that they came from Sahelanthropus because we haven't found them with a skull. But, you know, they're a hominid from, you know, 7 million years ago that lived in the Sahel region. So chances that was found pretty close to where the original Sahelanthropus judensis skull was found. So like we sort of assumed that they were also probably Sahelanthropus. But really, like, there's that whole Miocene ape thing where, like, in Africa, we have very few Miocene apes. It's really like the Pliocene and the Pleistocene where we actually start to get a decent picture of the human fossil record.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing to talk about. Like, we should have maybe ever talk about like the many fringe hypotheses of evolution. Like, for example, there's another example is like the hybrid between ape and pigs. You know,
like that one's crazy.
Yeah,
that was one of my favorite like whack hypotheses.
Yeah.
Then there's the stoned ape.
Oh yeah. Stoned ape.
Can't forget the stoned ape. Which I actually love that one. That is this.
Of course,
I think it appeals to a certain demographic.
Yeah.
I am that demographic.
So was my friend
Joe
Robert.
Rogan fans. The demographic is fans of Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. A Kafai, he'll pop up shortly. We said
I'm sure Kafai, if he believes in like human Ev, then he's definitely a proponent of stoned ape.
Yeah.
Have you also seen like there's this one guy who says that Neanderthals were like this hyper human predator, which hunted humans, like of Homo sapiens, and the Neanderthal looked pretty much like an ape, or at least like a chimpanzee with huge red eyes. Like, it's really weird, like how he or she interprets how Neanderthals sort of looked like.
That's a weird one. I've never heard that one. I've heard
I will put a link. I will put a link in the. You can see the image of maybe someone can screen share it. Let me see.
I've heard like the really racist like New Age one about like Neanderthals having bigger brains and stuff, and then they use it for like white supremacy. But that's really the only conspiracy I've heard about like Neanderthals.
Well, how about SFTs? Neanderthals are just mutated. Regular people rapidly mutated because they got hit by an ice age. An ice age made them mutate faster, and that's why their brows are thicker and all that stuff.
I mean, I did like a back of the napkin like calculation for how fast their mutation rate would have to be, and it was like 7,000 mutations per generation or something like that. Or like no, it wasn't per generation. I think it was almost like per year. just to get the amount of divergence between with the amount of divergence between modern humans and Neanderthals, to make that happen in like 600 years, you would have to get like 7,000 mutations per year, or 7,000 substitutions per year, which is an absurd substitution rate, like absolutely insane. If you think like Jeanson's substitution rate is high, that is many, many factors higher. Because Jeanson's is what, like 0.02 or something, which is higher than observed, but still like not 7,000 per year.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet they're so sure of themselves.
All right. So I went through that paper and some of that paper's references. And none of that has anything to do with the question at hand. So that's completely unhelpful.
Yeah.
Okay, can you screen share me, Speed?
What's that?
Can you screen share what I'm showing? This is the depiction of how they think the Neanderthal would have looked like. And I don't understand why. It's, they also say that the reason why humans are afraid of the dark is because this Neanderthal would have hunted us in the dark in the past. And that explains why we are afraid of the dark.
Are these also Bigfoot people?
I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if they thought they were looking people.
If you've ever seen a black bear walking on its hind legs, you understand where the Bigfoot stuff comes from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. I had one of those guys stalking me out in the woods a couple of years ago. Big black bear. I found a gigantic paw print on top of my footprints when I went for a walk.
Yeah,
I didn't.
Black bears get treed by cats all the time, so.
Yeah, but have you ever been stalked by a black bear? They do get a little gnarly.
If they're really hungry and they think you're really weak or something, they might.
Well, no.
Well, it makes sense why they go up to speed. No.
Mostly they're curious about us, and they will feign aggression to get rid of you. Like when I was a kid, it was a real common experience to have a black bear charge at you through the woods and beat bushes, and then he stops before he gets to you. And by that time, your heart is in your throat, you shit your pants, and then the bear turns around and goes away.
And they have the same reaction if you charge them. I mean,
exactly.
They're off. Like they don't want to deal with anyway.
Yeah, they shit their pants and then they have to take off their bear suit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw the debate on.
And here's Erica.
Hey, Erica.
Crispy, you're too quiet.
Oh. Hey.
Our favorite gibbon.
I'm a little tired. Didn't get a lot of sleep last night.
Oh, okay. I was just saying your mic volume's a bit quiet compared to everyone else.
Mine is?
No, Crisper's is.
Oh, Crispers. I was going to say, Crisper, your conversation with Jungle Jargon was what was keeping me up while I was editing my references until 4 a.m. last night.
A conversation?
You have a reference manager? You got to get a reference manager. Come on.
See, here's the thing. This end of this thesis was just entirely on me. I sent it for advisement editing like a month ago, and I got my edits back the day before yesterday. So I worked for like 12 hours on editing all that shit, and I do not have a reference manager. I need to get one. I'm never doing this again.
Yeah, there's some free options that are okay. But trying to do that is just it's a nightmare. You don't want to do those by hand.
It was not fun. All the periods and commas and all that crap and making sure it lined up with my refs in the text. It was annoying.
And you are going to make
mistakes. Have enough references?
Do I have enough references? I got way too. I think I ended up having over 150 references.
That's
something like
so
that.
That wasn't what the edit package you got back included?
It mostly included my advisor going through the text and being like, oh, this needs to be rephrased. And he's a big fan of having a source for almost every sentence. So I would be like, dimorphism is highly variable in primates. And he would be like, reference ? And I was like, okay. Well, what reference do you want? There's dozens. So I had to go
knowledge after a certain point.
Just give him all the references and he will shut up.
That's the thing. Eventually, I was just like, I got so fed up. I was like, you know what? You want the references? You'll get the references. I sat down and had like references for a sentence.
My usual strategy for that kind of thing is you get a couple of good review articles, and then you find a bunch of really good primary literature, and then just the first time it comes up, you say primary 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and reviewed in 6.
Yeah.
And then from there on out, you're just 6, 6, 6, 6, 6.
Well, what I started doing is I got a lot of my, information for things like, okay, all platyrrhines are, native to South and Central America and tend to be arboreal. Like that's just a blanket statement about New World monkeys. And so I was like, I got these 2 textbooks, Evolution of Primate Societies and Primates in Perspective by Campbell and Matani, respectively, and or reverse those. And I was like, you know what? And these are like, massive ass textbooks, like the go-to source for primatology courses. And I was like, you know what? Copy Campbell 2007, Matani 2012, and I just pasted it every time he was like, reference for really obvious thing about primates. And I was like, done. You want it? You got it.
Yeah.
So, but I've now got all this time. I don't know what to do with myself. So I thought I'd hop on. I really enjoyed your conversation last night, CRISPR, what I caught of it. I was in and out because.
Oh man, you've got problems then.
Yeah, God, I know. I'm a masochist.
Masochist, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The thing is, I needed something to keep me awake, and my blood pressure being through the roof just really.
Sometimes you need to get the blood flowing, right?
It worked, man. I mean, Walker alerted me to it in our Twitter group, and I was like, "Oh, CRISPR's talking to Maddox. I bet he's really pissed already."
Well, I
was like, I couldn't believe the patience.
You were right well, let me explain it. You were right about both of us, but it was American for him and British for me.
Dude, the thing about John is I was listening to a little bit of what you guys were saying. I came in and saw that Speed was live and pulled it up on my computer. And it's like anytime John tries to talk about anything that isn't programming, it's suddenly very clear how little this man knows. About the things that he tries to talk about.
He tries to bring it back to programming analogies.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and I forget who said it. I think it might have been, I forget, one of you guys was talking about how, keep pulling, I think it was you, Walker, pulling it into the programming language is the only way he can maintain the facade of having any, illusion that he knows what he's talking about, because most of us don't give a shit about programming.
Hey.
I said most, and I'm bitter because R gave me a hard time.
I just finished my bash script, so
Walker, you sympathize when you sent me. Yeah, it's R is a handful, but
okay, Erica, what did your fiance tell you about John's programming acumen? Remember that?
Well, the thing about my fiance is he exposes himself very little to John because he is of the opinion that it actively makes you dumber to listen to John Maddox. And so he was like, he's usually in the know about the YouTube sphere because I tend to talk about it sometimes. And, he's, the thing is, he actually walked in last night when I had the talk on in the background and he goes, "Oh, gross. Is that John Maddox?"
Nah.
I said, "Yeah, unfortunately it is."
Why do we do it to ourselves?
I don't know. But that when that man dares to tread into talking about anything that has to do with general evolution, let alone human evolution, it can be very it's like radiation to your cells in excess amounts. It just withers any brain cells that you've got going on.
But he does exactly the same thing with programming and with information theory. He learned a few words and he pretends that he knows what he's talking about, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And it just drives me crazy.
The wrong is wrong in this one.
He put together this word salad sentence. I was going to decipher it. The one where he was talking about AI and templates and all that. And sometimes his sentences, I like to just draw them out. And you end up with this I don't know, like this just panorama of connections.
There is no way you draw out his sentences any longer than he does.
No, I mean, actually draw the structure on paper, and there's all these you can't do it. Yeah.
I saw some comment on that debate he was in the other day that was like, if I simply don't have the.
Sorry.
Oh no, it was my bad. I think I probably interrupted. I saw some comment that was like, I don't have time for these kinds of debates because it takes John, 10 minutes to look for the next minute word of the day to use in his next sentence while he's working through it.
He's got to run back to the bathroom to get his next piece of word of the day toilet paper.
God. Yeah. The thing that kills me, what's been really pissing me off about these guys lately, like, and I hate to say, pissing me off because it's relative. These folks are on the grand scale of things the definition of inconsequential.
It's making you go away.
Yeah. But it does irritate me a little bit when I hear them, John is so, and he's the biggest defender in my opinion of this. He is so fast to pull out papers that he feels support him when he thinks he can use them to his advantage. And then he will ignore the consensus for everything he doesn't like. And so it's selective authority use to the nth degree.
Also the rest of the paper.
Oh, it's first Dunning-Kruger, check. Second, confirmation bias, check. And yeah.
And he'll sit around and crow about how in that debate he had with Randolph Richardson, which I didn't catch most of it. I saw some of it, but he was like talking about how, he had all these sources for the definition of this, that, or the other thing. And how dare Randolph have an opinion that differs from the primary source material that Maddox is toting out. And I'm thinking to myself, this is you in every conversation that I've ever had with you. God, the hypocrisy is just so tangible with that guy. I don't know. I rarely listen to him because it actually hurts my stomach. But when I do, I'm always reminded.
No, I totally feel that because sometimes we'll have like late night live streams, and like you were saying, you listen to it to keep your blood pumping because it'll be like 12, and you need to submit an assignment or something.
And no one else is streaming.
Better the coffee.
Yeah, no one else will be streaming except for John. It's the only option. And I'm like, I could turn on. So it's just mindless enough too, so you don't have to really pay a ton of attention. Mm-hmm. So. Sometimes it serves as better than like a TV show that might suck you in, or sometimes I'll listen to true crime, but that's just too interesting. John is just boring enough to.
He's cornered the market on late night live streams.
He's cornered the market, yeah. Man, I'm sure we'll be getting a stream at some point where he bitches and moans about this exact conversation.
Yeah, but he never watches our stuff. But he always comments on every single piece of it.
We'll get. You know what? Oh God, I'm so excited. You know what we're gonna get? We're gonna get a jaw-droppingly hilarious community post meme.
Oh yeah,
where he blows our mind with his comedic genius.
John, please make one about human evolution.
Yeah, I don't know where he gets all those stock photos of the dude in the chimp mask. He's got so many of those.
I feel like he makes them. I feel like he just finds a dude in a suit and then puts the chimp mask on top.
Maybe he does do that. That kind of does check out.
Well, let me see. It's been a while since I've looked at his compost.
Oh boy.
I haven't looked at any of those actually. I should start looking at that stuff. That's gold in itself.
Yeah, I mean, they were funny for a while. Now they're just kind of getting old and boring.
Yeah.
He posted one the other day that was like, it was essentially like, I finally got over my meme, like writer's block or whatever. And I was like, does he like sit down and brainstorm like funny concepts, or do they just come to him? If he's been having writer's block, that kind of suggests a high amount of effort, which is concerning.
The only thing you were talking about was the chromosome 2 fusion and the evolution of new body plans. But you also talked about something else with John Maddox. Whisper?
Wait, John talked about human chromosome 2?
I think I was standing first, right? Standing first.
Standing.
Yeah.
Well, Standing, I know for a fact that Standing is up a creek on the human chromosome 2 thing because he emailed Tompkins about those alphoid repeats for telomere and cryptic centromeres and was like, I'm waiting on a response. And he's still waiting.
Orphan Black. Sorry, guys.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we'll if Standing had a response, if Standing had some kind of way to combat those Alphoid repeats, because you know, Evograd just straight up mapped the whole thing out and was looking for like, okay, you know, these repeats, of course, are diagnostic of cryptic centromeres, and then you've got the telomeric repeats as well. And so he essentially mapped it out, and everything is where it should be. I went over it in depth in a video a while ago with like, okay, let's look at each of the chromosomes and see how many repeats we've got. And of course, there's massive amount of them just in human chromosome 2, right where the cryptic centromere should be. And when I asked Standing, I was like, you know, it's interesting. You talk a lot. You talked a lot about chromosome 2, and then you stopped. What are your thoughts on these repeats? Oh, well, I've emailed Tompkins and I'm waiting on a response. This was like 6-7 months ago, something like that. So if we had heard back from Tompkins, I'm sure we would have a 6-hour live stream from Standing by now.
All you need to do is look at how the genes line up on those three. Yeah. I mean, that's all you need. You don't need to go any further.
That's one thing that you can look at, of course, but still the details of these the centromere and the telomeres, that pretty much nails it down.
It's the thing about it too that's perhaps the most important is the hypothesis was laid out years before it came to fruition. That's the most important part. You know, this is a classic example. Oh, go ahead.
Even if it was made after it still makes only sense if we have a condensed ancestor. Of course, you can say in hindsight, like, oh, this is just how we were created by God. But still, it makes only sense if we were related. Yeah.
God ran out of telomeres, and that's why he put the 2 chromosomes together.
Well,
he didn't have enough.
They've thrown everything, Tompkins at least, and Standing for Truth by proxy, because those two are, if Tompkins says it, Standing will say it. And if Jeanson says it, Standing will say it. Those are guarantees, like death and taxes.
And Carter.
But yeah, they've thrown everything at human chromosome 2 to try to derail it from, satellite DNA, things like that. The fact that you can't get a telomere fusion. And you know, I made a chromosome 2 video going through each and every one of them. What does the literature say? Well, it turns out we do get telomere fusions, and we see them in equids, like actively. And the satellite DNA matches precisely with what we would expect from this kind of fusion in the semi-recent past. I mean, it's I could go on all day.
It's also interesting to note that in other species, for example, in the horses and the equids, and of course, you can also see the same thing in, like, if you compare the genomes of rats and mice and line up their chromosomes in a synteny map, their genomes are totally different from each other. There are still huge regions that match with the other, but with us, like, pretty much every single chromosome maps with the other, except for, of course, chromosome 2, which maps with 2 separate chromosomes in chimpanzees. That's the only significant difference when it comes to the chromosomal structure of our genomes.
Well, and another. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Like the thing I just posted. Take a look. You'll love it.
Oh God. Something tells me I won't love it. Oh wait, I do love this. This is really cool. Oh, this is awesome.
Biological hams.
Oh wait, so you can just take 2 reference genomes and it'll just plot them next to each other?
Oh yeah. That's where you. I've shown you guys a picture of this, the Synteny.
Oh, yeah. But I haven't seen the actual, like.
Oh yeah.
You can do it with.
Yeah.
Oh, this is awesome.
This is pretty cool.
Really cool.
Yeah, I think you showed that to me a long time ago, CRISPR.
Ooh, CRISPR! I bookmarked that. That's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing's sick. And you can see all of where the large scale inversions and like the karyotypic differences are.
Oh my God. Douglas Axe has an online course.
Yes, because there's nothing I would rather do than learn from the Discovery Institute.
Reasons why birds are not dinosaurs. Did Charles Darwin destroy society? Find out on April 15th. Oh, that's today.
Juicy.
I'm signed up to a few of these guys, so you can see how many email. I never get a chance to look at it. But the interesting thing is every time I try to track down something standing and Rum at the fruit bat, his pet fruit bat are saying, it always ends up here. It always leads me back to Creation.com and ICR and all those guys.
Well, I mean, of course it does. If these guys were trying to do cutting edge work, then they wouldn't be publishing Amazon books. They would be publishing papers.
Yeah. Institute for Creation. Oh, what do we got here? Oh, in Minnesota? Minnesota. Is this in Minnesota? I want to go to that. Free Church in Harris, I don't even know where the fuck Harris, Minnesota is. I don't think it exists. Oh, I could go there.
Are we just looking through Speed's email now?
Yeah. Look at my email.
I need to apologize to you, Speed. I timed praise out for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, because I told him his channel is full of a bunch of cowards and timeout happy dipshits. So I timed him out.
I love timing.
I thought it was really funny in the Maddox live stream last night. All I typed was that I sent a screenshot of it to the Twitter group chat.
This is really funny.
So all I said was that John was like, what did I say? Oh, I said John wasn't understanding the point that CRISPR was making, and then I told the Baptist Chad kid that I think he should take a biology course in college. And for some reason, I got muted by SFT. Yeah. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's to protect Baptist Chad because Baptist Chad is a real Chad.
Yeah, I just thought it was really funny because everyone in the chat was like, "Wait, why was Walker muted?"
Have you talked to Baptist Chad?
No, I haven't.
Oh, his real name is Will. He's 15 years old, and he's a piece of shit.
He is a piece of shit.
Well, I think he definitely should take biology in college because, there's no harm in it. At the very least, he'll learn some evolutionary biology stuff or some generic bio.
When you hear him talk, he just reminds me of Pickle Weenie Mash because he talks like he's got a mouthful of it.
Pickle Weenie Mush.
I got to tell you, like if you're
Mash sounds better. Sorry, Chris.
Like you mean like me, Jay?
I feel like if you're letting minors into your chat, you really got to be very careful with that because that is not particularly great thing to do at all times.
CRISPR, he's got mods of Praise's channel.
Yeah. He's on StreamYard. I think he can do anything. And the thing about him is that I was really light on the kid because I realized how young he was until he started to develop and he started doing really racist, crappy shit, and listen to the kid. I just have no use for him. It's amazing. In fact, he's one of the people that are blocked on this channel. So.
Really?
Well, it's just protecting you from ever having your channel taken down for child endangerment.
No, it's also protecting me from him because he is dangerous. He is just I don't know.
Well, CRISPR remembers when I got a 15-year-old kid on my channel. I think that's the reason one of my channel got taken down the first time because the kid we didn't know how old the guy was. Yep, I sent him I gave him my email. He sent me an email. I sent him a link. He came into my Hangout. Come to find out he's like 14 or 15 years old, and I'm like, no. And CRISPR was in my live chat. And he goes, if you don't have, I can't remember. CRISPR just said the best thing to do is to say no. This is for adults. Goodbye.
Well.
But I think that's CRISPR said many things, but it was all valid, and I was being try not to hurt the kid's feelings, but eventually I did have to kick him, and I think somebody reported that, and I ended up getting my channel kicked for like 2 months.
Really?
Hey guys.
Hey David.
Hey, I just wanted to say congratulations, Erica, on submitting your master's thesis.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I'm psyched.
Yep. What was your
I thought you were an anthro.
What was your master's thesis on?
What was it on?
Yep, just curious.
Oh, that's a dangerous question to ask. My thesis was an investigation on the pressures that lead to the emergence and persistence of maxillary canine sexual dimorphism or monomorphism in primates. So I was trying to figure out what pressures make males and females either the same or different across, I think my final count was 111 species and subspecies. And my thinking was that it was going to be a social structure thing. So my thinking was that it was probably going to have to do with dispersal sex, coalition sex, group size, and interestingly enough, relative female aggression. So I did like this multiple linear regression model on that, and I really want to talk about my results, but I think I'm going to try to publish it. And a lot of journals are like, you're not allowed to go around crowing about what you found until it's published.
Yeah.
They have these weird ideas about non-open access science, I guess. But I had some pretty significant results, so I'm excited. We'll see if we'll see.
It's not like a random walk. Like you also consider that possibility that the changes in size difference may also pretty random. Like it is also a possibility that you considered, right?
Sorry, I couldn't. You were breaking up a little. I didn't quite hear what you said.
Did you also consider the possibility that the differences in size could also be due to random chance, basically? Like there was no
I
specific
assume you
pattern.
did a Brownian test as well, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it wasn't just a single specimen measurement of either for canine height. It was multiple specimens from multiple different museums, and a mean was taken, and then it was, I transformed it to make it mesh better with the or scale better rather with the mean group size as well. But yeah, I mean, as far as whether or not it's significant noise wise versus noise, I'm pretty pleased with what I had. Originally, I included a couple of interactions, but it actually ended up being more straightforward than that. So I ended up not including them. It's boring, I know, but
No.
It's cool. It's cool to me. I mean, I think it's very interesting, because you've got gibbons, one of my favorite primates, which males and females are effectively indistinguishable from one another. Males, unless they've got dichromatism, so like a difference in their pelage, they've got the same size canine teeth. They're approximately the same body size, maybe very, very slight difference in like siamangs and stuff like that. But for Lars, it's all the same. Same with marmosets and tamarins, as well as, interestingly enough, some of the hominins. That's what we think anyways. Certainly humans are low on sexual dimorphism. But then you've got mandrills, right? Where that whole genus for Leucophaeus and Sphinx, you've got males that are 3 to 4 times the size of females, and they've got these gigantic dagger-like canine teeth, and they basically the sexes only interact with one another during the mating season. Otherwise, females live in these groups of like 800 plus, and they just mind their business, and males are entirely solitary until for the breeding season. They come in for like 2 months.
They act like different species almost.
Yeah, I mean they occupy different niches almost.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and coalition and dispersal has a lot to do with that as well. Because females in a lot of the Cercopithecus, so old world monkeys like macaques and baboons and mandrills, they stay in their natal group, so the males leave. And so they get to form these really tight-knit matrilines. So they don't really have a need to have big weaponry in their mouths because they'll just use numbers, essentially. And this is Sexual et al. Actually found this, I think it was in 2007, where a group of female mandrills mobbed one of the males. And even though they're like 1/4, 1/5 the size, they killed him. So it's, numbers, it's a numbers versus single weaponry game. And that's, of course, very, very rare that something like that will happen. But
it's like that old joke about, would you rather fight a bunch of duck-sized horses versus one horse-sized duck?
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly the concept. And you get weird situations with chimps where the males and females are roughly the same size and have roughly the same size canine teeth. They're considered slight to moderate to dimorphism, but the males form coalitions in the chimps and the females form coalitions in bonobos, and they're like very, very, very closely related, of course. And the only thing that's really different is their geographic location. So it's like, why did that happen? What pressures led to that kind of social structure? That wasn't the question in my thesis.
Is also a reason why some primates have very, very small canines and some have large canines, even between both sexes?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's usually how you classify whether something is dimorphic generally or not. It's like, is there overlap?
Erica, have you looked into the genetics of this, or
so there are models that have, so like correlated response, the correlated response hypothesis or model, it essentially who is it by? I think it's by Greenfield. But it's essentially says that like teeth are going to be something that's probably like autosomally linked or whatever. I'm probably going to butcher the genetic stuff on it. And so if there's a pressure for change in one sex, it should change in the other sex as well, unless it decouples.
Right.
And so that question is there as well. Like, why is it? And my conclusion, one of my conclusions, which I think I can say I think this is pretty obvious, and not really a novel for my thesis, but I think that these changes in the genetics that kind of ultimately control their expression are incredibly plastic. Because we've got this one, you guys have all seen it. I know you have. There's a colobus monkey called the black and white colobus, or sometimes it's called the mantled colobus. It's beautiful. It's got that long black and white cape down the back, and they're really, really cute. And they have a series of different subspecies. Their actual nomenclature is Colobus goriza, but they've got a bunch of subspecies: Galerum, Goriza goriza, Kikiensis, all sorts of different ones. And some of them are really dimorphic, and some of them aren't at all. And what that suggests to me is that this is something that has happened somewhat recently, because you can actually track it through like museum records. Females are getting these massive canines. Well, why are they? What's going on there? If you can gain differences, or if you could lose differences quickly, what does that say about how you can gain them? How quickly can this process occur? And so my thinking is it's got to be really, really plastic, and it's got to have to do with social systems if it's that plastic, because usually the environment just simply can't change fast enough to kind of spur
when you say plastic, do you mean phenotypic plasticity, or just like how easy it is to change these canine sizes?
I'm using it colloquially, so I'm just saying that I think that I think that social change can occur relatively quickly and
readily evolve.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if it was more of a social thing than an environmental thing. Social would still be environmental, but
yes, right. Ultimately, they're linked. But my thinking is that I found way more of a relationship between the social aspects than the environmental ones, because I included habitat or like substrate, as well as like predation pressure as well, just to see, like when I was fooling around with the data initially, and neither of those are even close to.
I don't know. Maybe phenotypic plasticity has also something to do with it. Like I remember in humans, like when some populations began to use agriculture for sustenance, our jaw or our lower jaw changed, so that we gained an overbite. Which also maybe correlated with the change from how we pronounce the words, like the old European language pronounced the father with the P, like pater, for example. Yep. But now we have a father with the F or a V. Yeah. That's,
I mean, there's some. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You should get a bunch of the pygmy mouse lemurs, which are apparently the smallest primate, and are not particularly sexually dimorphic. And then just do a selection study.
You could, yeah.
If you want something to do for the next 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, therein lies the problem. We just, primates.
That's not a problem. That is the answer.
Maybe I'll do it, CRISPR. I don't know. Maybe I'll make that. Maybe I'll just do it.
You should just get a monkey house in your backyard.
That's what I need.
Like this is you could probably.
The other thing, Erica, that I'm really interested in is neurotransmitters and differences in very slight differences in brain structure in the limbic system.
Oh, right.
Between highly dimorphic species and similar species, and that is how I got into neuroscience about 20 years ago in the first place. Is wondering about that.
Right.
And if you run across anything on that, please send me an email or send me a note. Let me see a paper on it or two.
Yeah, I wonder if anything's been done, if anything's really been done with that. I think in primates, the problem tends to be primates are just incredibly diverse as an order. I mean, even as far as mammals go, they occupy just about every kind of environment and just about every kind of social structure, mating system, whatever that you can imagine.
You mean disparity, right?
Sorry.
The diversity refers to the number of species, and disparity refers to like how different are they? Like Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
between
you're referring
males.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
the different species, yeah, between species.
Well, no. Yeah, what she's saying is the little bastards are everywhere.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to see the range of, like, outside of humans, like one of the animal, or one of the non-domesticated. I think it is the most prevalent, the widest range of a non-domesticated species is rhesus macaques. They're everywhere, and they're incredibly resilient. These little guys are,
Well, they get privilege in India, so
I'm pretty sure there's at least one kind of bird that's got them beat.
Probably.
Yeah, or like Norwegian brown rats.
Rats too. That's
forgive my ignorance, but what exactly is the difference between a rhesus monkey and a rhesus macaque?
They're the same thing.
Yeah,
they are the same thing. Okay.
Rhesus monkey is usually just what papers will refer to, because some people don't know what a macaque is. It's just easier to call them a rhesus monkey.
I just generalize them all as dirty little filthy poop slingers and leave them alone.
That's what they are.
I would say
awesome.
rhesus monker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said you have to be careful asking me about what my thesis was doing. David Neff was in here. You gotta be careful asking me that kind of question.
I think you were talking about something interesting though when you said that, like, when you're talking about the colobus monkeys, and that we can see like dimorphism change just by using museum specimens. So has this been like a super recent evolutionary pressure to evolve either towards or away from dimorphism?
That's the thinking. Yeah, because my advisor, or not my advisor, he's my advisor for my PhD, but for my master's, he just provided my data, my raw data. Joseph Plavkin, he's like the main guy for dimorphism. If you find a dimorphism paper for canine teeth, it's going to be by him, or he's going to be a name on there. And Peter Kappeler, and Van Schaik, I think, were the three guys that went out for the 95 paper and collected hundreds of museum specimens. And he tells the story about how he's like, yeah, I'm sitting in this museum and I'm looking at this colobus monkey skull. It's labeled as female. And he's like, there's no way this is a female. These canines are enormous. This has to be a male. It has to be mislabeled. And so they keep all the pelts, because usually these are shot specimens from anywhere from, I don't know, 20 years ago to 100, 200 years ago. It's a wide range. And so he goes and he finds the coat, and to a degree the genitals are kind of usually preserved on the skin, and sure enough, it's a female. And so he's like, this is
like,
very. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just asking, the large teeth in males. This, of course, they use it for to compete with each other. But I was wondering, do females also prefer males, or in some species at least? Do they prefer males with larger canines? Is there also a sexual selection going on there?
I don't. My thinking is no. That it has been proposed that that's the case. But the main thing about the teeth is, weirdly enough, they're not typically used as often in actual physical fighting as they are on display. So it's basically pretty much all primates. Yeah, they'll use yawn displays. So when they yawn, they're not yawning because they're tired. They're yawning to show you that they've got these big weapons and that you don't want to mess with them.
That's why I yawn.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, same, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to intimidate the other folks on the street. You don't know.
Hey, wait till they get a load of me.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting deal. And it does depend on the species, though. Like, their rank is interesting as well, because usually larger canines mean you're going to win more fights, meaning you've got a higher rank in the troop. That's typically going to be the line of thinking that you follow, especially with a large group living species, which are going to be your cercopithecoids, geladas, baboons, and macaques, and to a lesser extent mandrills. And there's been a couple of interesting studies done on, do females actually prefer males with a higher rank? And the answer is, it depends. What females really want to do is they want to give the best shot to their offspring. So if you're a lower ranking female, your odds of getting to mate with the highest ranking male is not going to be superb. So it actually ends up in these large groups evening out quite a bit, because the operational sex ratio in the larger groups tends to be more even, excluding the mandrills. So the males with the highest rank don't necessarily sire more offspring than the ones that don't. But that being said, when you can include infant mortality, all of a sudden you start to see a favor towards females that mated with the higher ranking males, because they tend to keep consortships or friendships or whatever with these males and can have access to better resources. So very, very indirectly, you could say that there is a sexual selection for these canine teeth, but it isn't because females see the big canines and are like, oh, wow, those are really sexy. It's males with big canines win more fights, get higher up in the rank, and high rank ensures better access to resources, which females want.
All right.
I need to peace out so I can go to class, so I'll see y'all.
Bye, Walker.
Okay, Walker.
Bye. Erica, did you also see? I saw an article from Nature, I think, about like an island where there were monkeys and it was like ravaged by a hurricane.
Yeah,
and the different communities started supporting each other basically in the hard times.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, in the Cayo Santiago population, that was Hurricane Maria from a couple of years ago. The primary, prior to that, competition was mostly centered, it was more relaxed amongst individuals, and support was more relaxed as well. But now that there's fewer places to sit down in the shade, which is, you wouldn't think that that's very important, but when you're an island living monkey, having shade and not overheating is pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
So competition for shade has ramped up, and because that competition has ramped up, support systems have been more important, essentially. So yeah, it's almost like, yes, they are supporting each other due to the hard times, but they're also potentially supporting each other so that they can get the upper hand on other groups.
All right, yeah. Like you would almost think like, oh, if it were humans, we would just like fight each other for the shade.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't come that far.
Yeah. No, we use money. Like one person controls the shade, and they say, no, if you have enough money, then all right, we will think about it.
No, very true.
Yeah.
Yep. So everybody's familiar with Cell's reasoning behind why God created primates and other creatures that were so similar to us. Is everybody familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
Should I play it?
You can. I mean, honestly, I
think it's just speculation. Like, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, what his opinion is on why this is the case. Like,
well, he makes the case. Instead of playing it, he makes a real strong case here that God created animals so that we can use them for biological testing, and it wasn't until the last 5 or 10 years that we started actually utilizing God's great creation, that he made the animals so similar to us so that we could have better medicine, and we wouldn't have to sacrifice human fetuses or which he goes on about, and we wouldn't have to do our testing on humans, that we could do it on primates and we could do it on other animals. So, but anyway, it probably isn't worth, but that is his what do they call it? Post hoc, ad hoc reasoning behind
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
similarity. So I don't know, it's just
ad hoc reasoning, maybe like you observe something and you say, oh, it's explained by this, and that's it. No further.
Yeah, they love to say both post hoc, ad hoc when they're talking about evolution. But anyway, he comes up with this theory, and every time he talks about it, my skin crawls because I kind of like animals, and I mean that God created humans and they're so special, and animals don't really matter at all to him. And that's kind of what he's saying. And that's kind of how they feel about the entire goddamn planet, that nothing matters but humans.
So it's kind of strange that he takes that route too, in my opinion, because it's like what he's essentially saying is, yes, we are very similar. And then by phylogenetic classification, that's going to land humans still within the hominoids. That's still going to land us as apes, which is something that the creationists fight so freaking hard to avoid having to say.
Right.
Because once humans are apes, it becomes very hard to separate your fossil hominins into the apes versus the humans, because they're all apes. So this seems like a weird concession. It brings to mind what CRISPR said last night about the protein orchard rather. You don't want to go down that route, I don't think. Not with the humans.
That's the other thing that Sal goes on about, is that he insists that evolutionists or evolutionists must have common ancestry for proteins. And I'm like, and that drives me crazy. And then but the thing that drives me crazy about the thing about Saul Cordova that you need to note is that
Chris wanted to say something, I think.
He did clear that up last night, that he doesn't think that is a prediction of evolution, right? He did actually say that he understands that is not something that evolution is predicting.
Okay, so he did, but why was he so shocked about it, and why does he keep talking about it?
He's talking about it because he likes the orchard model, and he finds it to be relevant to creationism for other reasons, and so he wants to put it into the minds of creationist friendly schools that, hey, you can teach this thing, and it's sort of expected by evolution generally, the secular version even, but it's like what we expect as creationists, and so hey, everybody likes that, right?
But he's lying.
But still, like you, of course, you have first protein superfamilies that go all the way back to eukaryotes, even it's not not even close.
He's got problems. He's got problems. So it's definitely true that we see that there are independent proteins.
Yeah.
Right? That's obviously the case. I don't know anybody who would argue against that. I've never heard anybody argue for common ancestry of all proteins.
Okay, I basically have the original dialogues, and he came into this with an entirely different view, and it is because of my criticism of him that he is starting to modify his story. And you'll notice that Saul Cordova does that. The other thing about Saul Cordova is this thing about he will agree that that we can do a phylogenetic tree, but then he comes up with this bullshit that the reason for that is because God planned it that way.
Well, so I was kind of floored by the conversation that CRISPR had with them once CRISPR basically said, okay, so you want to say that there are orchards that exist for proteins, therefore it follows from the creationist perspective, you must have some kind of criteria by which to separate the protein kinds that then must be standardized and applied to all other organisms. Yes? And Sal was essentially like, yeah, I don't really like to get in the weeds with the terminology. And I'm kind of sitting here thinking, yeah, exactly. And I'm sitting here thinking, hold on just a second. What exactly? And I am maybe in the minority here, but I like Sal. I don't have a problem with Sal, but there's got to be some kind of cognitive dissonance going on there, in my opinion, because how do you manage to cope with the massive preponderance of data there?
Have you ever heard of Morton's demon?
I haven't.
It's basically like I think it was one creationist or ex-creationist maybe explaining his thought process, and he described it like a demon picking evidence that he liked and picking evidence or rejecting evidence that he doesn't like, and that's how he maintained the view basically.
Well,
but I think it's deeper than that. I think he is actually very good at what he does. He knows what the hell he's doing, and he runs it. He agrees. He's agreeable. He goes along, and then he's got all these gotchas, right? And you're going to learn more about this man over the next coming years. Okay, trust me.
It's just weird to me that he stops it at, what did he say, CRISPR, like plants and animals? He's like, I think we can easily say that plants and animals are different kinds, and then it's like, okay, well that's fine. But then you've got one kind for all of animals, so humans are animals, and there's a common ancestor of all animals. I don't think that can mesh with your 6,000 years. And
right.
He just brushed off the whole topic. I didn't really understand how he managed to kind of sleep on that one,
Cell is 90% PR for creationist institutes, and that's what he does. So
it's also an interesting observation, like when you ask them, like, oh, can you show me the kinds? Like, for example, can you show me whether dogs are related to foxes or maybe other bears, like such? But when you ask them like that, they will immediately jump all the way to like the deepest divisions, like plants and animals, which is not what we were talking about, basically. Yeah.
Wait, and it's great too, because you like just say at that point. Okay, so let's say I give you independent creation of plants and animals. So you're saying that it's definitely not a young Earth, then, right? And then watch their heads explode.
Yeah, I don't understand. And he to his credit, and maybe I suppose to what Speed is saying, he deftly kind of sidestepped that whole thing and brought the conversation back to, okay, let's talk about proteins. And I kind of just sat there thinking to myself, like, here I am, I'm editing my thesis, listening to this, and I'm thinking to myself, these guys want to put multiple kinds within primates alone, and Sal is just kind of like these guys, meaning the baraminologists. And Sal just doesn't even want to kind of attempt it. Like, I almost have to give more credit to the baraminology guys. At least they're trying to kind of make it work. With Sal's situation, I almost feel like he's like, you know what? He takes the backwards approach where he's like, let's nuke abiogenesis, and then everyone will be creationists. And it's like there's 150 steps in between those two things,
Yeah.
Like,
there's another word they just came up with that came up with for the first time, the baranome. Have you heard of that? Heard that word?
is that like the OG genome?
I'm not sure what the hell that is. The baranome, they call it. And I think he's talking about.
I think if you get all the genes from one kind, and that is like the whole.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he puts up that there's that diagram that shows that chickens, we share 48 genes with chickens that we do not share with mice, and that I don't know how they did that analysis. I can't find the data. I want to find one gene that he's talking about that we share with a chicken but don't share with mice. But I think it has to do with some statistics or statistical analysis that they did.
Well, then it's possible that mice can lose the gene.
Holding down Alt F1. Why can't people hear me? Oh yeah, I hate this.
Oh,
how many genes?
I think 48. I've got the picture
out of 20-something thousand. That's not a lot.
Yeah, and it's how exactly did they come up with that, and what parameters were they using for homology, and there's a lot of questions there. So. And then he admits that a lot of people do not like that diagram that he shows. So I don't know what exactly he's. But anyway, I tried tracking down source material on that, and I found the papers, and I found the original paper, but and they've got a bunch of supplements that don't download.
While I'm thinking of it here. If you guys ever want to have some real fun with people talking about the baraminology and all of that, just make sure you bring up the sturtlefish. The paddlefish sturgeon hybrid, which is, if we're keeping score, a hybrid between two different families.
Yep.
It's like a hyena having a kid with a tiger or something. I don't know. That's really weird.
It's wild. That whole thing is absolutely wild.
Is it known like how they can do it? Like, did they preserve the chromosomal organization? Perhaps I don't know how they could interpret it still. Like, or maybe we are just like, for example, maybe the family level classification is arbitrary, and thus we are just like overstating maybe their differences. Perhaps I don't know. Maybe that's also a possibility.
Welcome back, Andrew.
Andrew's back. Which is good.
They've been separate for about 180 something million years.
Oh, that's even worse than a tiger and a hyena. Yeah.
I'm trying to find that illustration, and I can't.
Yeah, it's as Walker says in the live chat, it's worse than it's like a hyena mating with a kangaroo. Exactly. My God.
Oh, let's see. Android Blanket product. Well, guys, dead air.
Oh, I think I can bring up a topic. Do you know Thomas Holtz, like a famous paleontologist? Like he has like a recent presentation done, and you can look it up on YouTube about Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it's really interesting. Like it turns out that T-Rex was so big that its juveniles and subadults were like different. They acted like different species, basically. Like you have the juveniles hunting down smaller prey, and the subadults hunting down medium-sized prey, and the T-Rex obviously hunted down like the big adults in the environment. And it is also the reason why the ecology of like T-Rex was absent in medium-sized predators. Like the whole niche of medium-sized predators was just taken up by the juvenile and subadults of T-Rex.
Yeah, I don't think that's super surprising, because niche partitioning is something that is seen in a lot of different organisms that have like kind of life histories that are not familiar to mammals, I suppose, like different life histories. Arthropods are big on that, where each stage or instar. Brainbug is going to kill me for butchering. It's been a long time since I've done it.
It's really known among mammals. This isn't really known among mammals. Like imagine a cat so big as an adult that its babies and kids are like lions, and they compete with lions in the environment, basically. Like it's like that. All right.
Yeah, that's really. I wonder how. I mean, I imagine the same thing probably happened with a lot of the sauropods. Like, I bet younger sauropods exploited almost entirely different plant resources than adults.
Yeah. I remember one species of sauropod, and I don't know specifically which species it was. Like the juveniles had different shaped teeth, and they were like grazing on like lower plants, of course, obviously. But the adults were like grazing more selectively on like the leaves of higher elevation. Yes, it's indeed. Like I think it's also to do with like dinosaurs laid eggs, so they are constrained to have very very small babies, even though they themselves are very big. They cannot have very big eggs because the eggs cannot be at a certain size unless they will like they choke to death, basically, because the oxygen cannot diffuse through the egg, so the egg has to stay at a minimum size, basically, and that's why they always, even the biggest dinosaur always starts out small, and they need to go through this ontogenic niche stages always. Yeah.
I think too that there's been some interesting stuff done on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, that was just me clicking the wrong button. Sorry.
Oh yeah. All I was going to say, I think it's interesting that that their lifespans almost don't seem to. Their lifespans don't, at least if we're correct for tyrannosaurs and things like that, don't necessarily reflect that. Like they must have been growing wildly fast and had to consume so much food just in order to metabolically keep up with this insane growth rate.
I think like one estimate of like Oh, sorry.
That's just cool as a concept to me. Because what is the T-Rex lifespan thought to be? 40 or 50, something like that?
I think they reached like adult size at the age of 20, 25.
Yeah, that's just so much growth.
Yeah.
This is the diagram I was talking about that he shows, and it's related to the Science News article, and then they link to a paper, and there's like a trail, and they show like with this Venn diagram 48 chicken genes that are not, or basically that we share with the chicken, but we don't share it with mice. And then, of course, zebrafish. That sort of thing.
So this is what happens when you don't include a very limited number of taxa. Because I guarantee that if you included a bunch of other mammals, a bunch of other birds,
right,
etc., what you would find is that in a bunch of the other mammals, you see those 48 genes, right?
Yeah.
And so it's okay. This is a gene that was lost in the lineage going to mice.
Yeah, so we're talking about incomplete lineage sorting and things like that.
Maybe
no, it's not incomplete lineage sorting.
No.
It's just loss.
just lost. Yeah,
you're not dealing with incomplete linear sorting at this scale.
I mean, it's more with alleles, right? Not with like genes themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's right.
And that was why I wanted to find one example of one gene that we share with the chicken that we don't share with the mice, so that I could check on it, and look up a few other bits of info on it and find out what the gene does. There are probably a lot of pseudogenes included here.
We can still see like the overwhelming number of genes are shared by all of them, like 10,000 in the middle, right?
Right. Yeah. That's a pretty good one.
The attitude around this stuff is so frustrating to me, though, because and this comes from the usual suspects that we have here on YouTube, where something like this will be proposed, like it's been some kind of hush discovery that scientists they don't want to talk about, like in smoky crowded rooms. No one wants to admit that, oh wow, there are certain genes that look at them, they seem to violate evolution or some nonsense like that.
Right.
And then you have one conversation with anybody who's even adjacent to the field, and they'll be like, oh yeah, well, which, like with CRISPR here, what you see with that is simply lost. That's it. Like it's not this big mystery. But it's the enemy. It's like that classic thing where the enemy is both simultaneously, soy boy betas and also incredibly strong and devious. Because no reaction by the scientific community would be appropriate. Lucretius would find a way to warp it regardless. Like if they put it out there publicly and discussed it frequently, they'd be like, oh, look, they're admitting there's an issue. We don't like and even though there's an explanation, they tend to not agree, quote unquote. And by that, I mean, they don't like it. Or, if it's like, oh, it's just not a big deal, so no one talks about it, then it's a conspiracy and they're pushing it under the rug. It's like there's no, it's like flat Earth stuff a lot of the time. There's no reaction that would be appropriate for them.
Right.
It's like I recall there's like a handbook on conspiracy theories and how to recognize them, and one of the aspects of them is that conspiracy theories are often incoherent with itself, and they are more about denying the consensus rather than having a coherent internal structure. Basically, it's like one example is like conspiracy theorists who believe that Diana was murdered also tend to believe that she is still alive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, so Cell, like for the first 20 minutes of his videos lately, has been talking about how powerful evidence for evolution and common descent is in phylogenetic trees. And then he brings up this thing as his proof that it can't be, that they're not phylogenetic trees. And then the other bit of proof he comes up with, and he says this out loud a couple of times, which doesn't mesh with what you were saying about him what he told you, CRISPR. He says, how could a topoisomerase evolve into some other gene or some other protein? And he shows like a zinc finger protein, and then he shows collagen. And he says, how could zinc fingers evolve into collagen? So he is saying this stuff. And no matter what he told you, he was bullshitting. This is his main point, that couldn't have evolved. You couldn't evolve a collagen from a zinc finger topoisomerase. And like, what the hell? I don't know. And I haven't watched the end of this video. Maybe he comes up with some other really good evidence, but he claims he's going to destroy the whole phylogeny idea. So in this one particular video, I'll link it in the description if anybody wants to check it out.
Oh, it's Cell, right? Who you're talking about right now, right?
Cell Cordova. He's one of my.
It's interesting. Like I remember you, Erica, having a hangout with Cell on like phylogenetics, and he was like really cordial about it. Like, but then
Cell is my big buddy.
But then later he went on to a hangout with other creations, and he said like that phylogenetics is all bullshit. That's
He's very strange to observe on YouTube, because he's always been kind and great with me and all that kind of stuff. And in conversations that I've seen him have with like Dan or others, he tends to go with the conversation. Like if Dan presents something that perhaps Sal had not covered previously, or maybe he's something he was incorrect about. I can't think of any specific examples, but he'll say, "Oh yeah, you're right," or "I'll look into that." Like he did that with CRISPR a lot last night. He would be like, "Oh, that's an interesting point. I suppose I'll need to look into that, or I need to brush up on this, or I need to brush up on that." But then he'll go on a different stream and employ the same confidence he had prior to that conversation.
Right.
And I'm wondering kind of how that works. I kind of want to ask him about it at some point and be like, what's the deal with this? Because I don't really get it.
Kids, don't listen to Old Speed when he warns you about somebody like Standing for Truth or Sal Cordova. Just ignore me. I'm old and crotchety, right?
That's so harsh. You're gonna put Sal on SFP's level. That's harsh, Speed.
Didn't you know they actually did a tier list and they put Sal on top of it?
I know, and I was choking. I was trying to reach through the screen and grab Dapper Dino and say, no. No.
We knew we would upset you, Speed. We knew.
Oh, you upset me.
At least one person has to be on the top. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a very interesting list, right? So it's he had to.
In Sal's favor, he has led me on some interesting little research expeditions, which I enjoy because he's a cut above the rest as far as what he does. But it is because he is a cut above the rest that he is so fucking dangerous. And he wants to teach children. So there you go. Watch him. Anyway.
Yeah, one little quick comment, since we're on Sal Cordova. The other day on one of his streams, if you can believe it, Stephanie got timed out, if you can imagine that. In the
why was that? What did she do?
I don't know. I saw it happen. I didn't see the comment. It was probably, I believe it might have been that Graham Gold guy, I think, was the person that did it. It didn't say, who did. Sometimes it says or whatever, but yeah. I couldn't believe, how can a person like Stephanie, who just kind of rambles on, So that just goes to show you the type of people that are in his, chat, that are his Sal's followers, at least, but they're all on all the channels, obviously. But yeah, I thought that was kind of sad.
Yeah, because Stephanie, God, all she does is write poetry, and
right. I know. I was shocked when I saw that. Right.
Obviously a Christian or a believer, but somebody we really appreciate, because her comments, she puts out a lot of them, but every 20th one, they're really kind of cool. She says some things that are pretty neat. So I don't know.
Right.
And never anything mean, never anything mean at all toward anybody.
Right.
So if anybody finds out why she got timed out, I really want to know.
Yeah. I was shocked when I saw that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So, Andrew, you want to ask a question, correct? Andrew's been dying to ask a question, right? No?
He's been dying to.
Dying.
I just want to be part of the conversation. I don't really have a question per se.
Oh.
Now,
okay.
I've got a question for you, Andrew. Man.
I apologize.
How'd you end up back on let's see, weren't you there last night on
Yes, he was. He was, and he did not call his sponsor.
Shame on you, Andrew. You're exposing yourself to unnecessary stress.
Well, I did get one good thing out of it yesterday, though.
What was that?
CRISPR was there.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a good thing.
And showing John showing Maddox what for.
I'm actually shocked that John let CRISPR in.
Yeah,
that was such a bad move on his part.
Yeah, he'll abuse anybody. It doesn't matter. I was waiting for him to show up today. I was trying to bait him to show up today because he showed up the other day. We were talking about guns. So, but
John came into the chat.
Yeah, I actually apologized to him because I kind of went off the deep end because he said something that hit me in the personal bone, basically.
Right.
And about gun control, and I went off on him, and it was actually what he said did not merit my venom. So I apologized to him. And we had to talk about gun control. And we agree on a hell of a lot of stuff except for red flag laws. And then I just waited for him to go away. But I wish he would come back and talk about genetics, because that would be a different kind of discussion. But anyway, I apologized to him, and I owed him an apology, because I did go off the deep end. So
if John is talking about anything that involves actually having to have any kind of formal education in a topic, he will not go and have that conversation when he can't control the mute button.
That's correct. Yep. Or when you can't control the dialogue. And I don't believe you don't have a question, Andrew. You always have a question.
I did have one question I want to ask, and I do apologize for my speech. These darn retainers.
Don't worry about it. I know how that goes. I said, don't worry about it. I know how that goes. I had a palate expander for a long time, and it was not fun.
Thank you for understanding.
We're used to hanging out with a lot of stoners, so you don't sound any different. So you're fine.
All right. So I did want to ask something, Erica, about phylogenetics and how creationists don't really understand it. Well, maybe Sal, but I guess I wouldn't call him a creationist per se, or not the kind we're talking about, if you would agree.
Sal?
Yeah, like I know he's technically a creationist, but like he doesn't seem creationist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but he's a young Earth creationist.
Yeah, I think when you understand, he kind of goes about it a different way.
Yes. Anyways, yes. I want to ask Erica, how do you feel about, because SFT often does this, and
Speech, somebody is asking you a question in live chat. So.
Oh, they are. Oh.
Leo. Yeah.
Leo.
Yeah. Speed was darn it, I forgot. Go ahead, Speed.
I'm trying to find the question. So
he wants to know what you apologize Maddox for.
Because I went off the deep end when he made a comment about Biden and his executive orders on gun control, and I called him a few words that I don't even normally use, and I was overreacting, sort of, because it just pissed me off.
I mean, you had an emotional response.
I had a very emotional response. And when you have an emotional response, somebody calls you on it, I'm going to apologize for it. So,
Speed, I wouldn't be surprised if Maddox starts using that to his advantage.
Oh, probably. He probably will. So,
I mean, look at it this way. At least you didn't lose a group of friends for 6 months.
I mean, the stream got another guest and myself to almost break down and cry, because so we had to kind of divert it to other topics. So it was just a little too sensitive for a few of us. I don't know. Someday I will address that shit on this stream, because it has to be addressed. But I got a lot of research to do. So anyway.
It's one thing that I want to bring up with Erica. Like before she joined, we were talking about like the aquatic ape hypothesis, and also like how whether humans went through a knuckle walking stage or not, and they basically went bipedal when they went down the trees, like as an alternative to the knuckle walking stage. Like I don't know if you have any opinions on the aquatic ape hypothesis or the knuckle walking stage.
Aquatic ape hypothesis doesn't have any substantial support for it. I mean, there's no one in the literature who's out there actually advocating for it, because there's nothing to really even bolster a baseline there. As for the knuckle walking thing, I mean, basically, side note, anything that you can attribute trait-wise for humans for the aquatic ape hypothesis can also be attributed to our capacity for supremely efficient water usage. The way that our muscle to fat ratio, how our muscles work in and of themselves, the ratio of slow to fast twitch, all that kind of stuff. It better corroborates a persistence hunting lifestyle or a long distance walking lifestyle rather than actually coming from the sea. There's also just not a fossil record that exists that supports a coastal subsistence for for the beginning of hominin evolution. I would propose. As for the knuckle walking thing, there's been some really interesting recent work out there that supposes that humans may come from rather an arboreal quadruped from an arboreal suspensory adapted primate, much like what we see with orangs and gibbons today.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think you can go much earlier than Sahelanthropus chidensis as far as what's going to be a hominin. I mean, the record, as Walker mentioned earlier, gets kind of spotty in the Miocene for African apes. But what would be very telling is if we could find a suspensory adapted hominoid that is appropriate in timing, that has the head on top of the vertebral column.
A few years ago, I did see a paper about like a hominoid with a specific shape of a pelvis, which shows maybe it was like a posture more like upright instead of like a quadrupedal on the ground, perhaps.
Yeah. It could be. I mean, the thing is too is that I don't know, and this is something I need to look into. I don't know that locking one's knuckles, which is usually the trait that we use as diagnostic for knuckle walking. I don't know that we can necessarily make that connection. Like, if memory serves to a degree, I believe orangs and halobatids can also lock their knuckles, and they don't knuckle walk. But I don't know that for sure, so don't quote me on that. I'm early hominin locomotion isn't really something that I'm super familiar with, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
I was amazed watching the volcano footage, which, by the way, is very relaxing if you like to relax. And all of these people trekking for miles and all of the trekking that we do. And then I've been watching geology videos, and human beings they can really trek, And then I was thinking, because I'd recently heard that we could basically outlast any animal as far as tracking it.
The vast majority, there are very few long distance movers that can outpace us. I believe there's 5.
Yeah, and then I was thinking back to my youth, when deer hunting, we used to track down wounded animals, and we could, we'd be out there all day just walking, and eventually you'd find them resting, So that's interesting that we are that good at it.
At
least we're good for something.
There's a really interesting book out there called Kindred that goes over the foot morphology differences between Homo sapiens, archaic and modern, versus Neanderthals. Because the way that they move is more adapted for smaller distances over more rugged terrain.
Yeah.
When compared to even archaic sapiens, which is long distance over flatter terrain. It's quite interesting because humans have long time been, we're big game hunters, but early on in our evolution versus early on in Neanderthal evolution, they were mobbing larger big game over shorter distances while we went longer distances and had a much broader diet is the current thinking. But we did
I also remember maybe it's false, but I also remember something along the lines of like the Neanderthals. They hunted more like close range, like they hold a spear and they just jabbed the prey to death. But we can throw things from a very far distance to kill the prey, basically. I don't know if this something is true or not. Maybe it's an old idea.
No, I think that still tracks. I think some people are proposing that Neanderthals may have had control over some kinds of long distance weapons. I mean, they certainly could throw spears, and I think some have, because they've got very rudimentary bows. But primarily, you're right. They would mob these larger mammals and butcher them at the site, and then take food back as large groups. So it was like a numbers game with them usually, and usually used it. Like I think if memory serves, the wear on their arm bones suggests that they did a lot of up close fighting kind of with these kinds of animals.
Yeah, I think it's similar to like rodeo riders, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. So it's
I remember like a study. I remember like a study that compared the injuries of Neanderthals to like rugby players, maybe even like something like that. Yeah.
Well, and an interesting thing is, it doesn't look like they this is what's being supposed right now anyways. It doesn't look like they partitioned their labor as much as Homo sapiens did, because males and females both have very similar injuries. So this suggests that both members were out and about at least most of the time for hunting.
I was happy that we were good at something.
Oh yeah. You won't find a better long distance persistence hunter except maybe with Siberian Huskies, and we bred them for that.
So like the survival of Homo sapiens over Neanderthals is probably due to like our differences. It wasn't like there was of course an element of chance. There's always an element of chance, but there may be probably a reason behind regarding our differences too.
Yeah,
right?
some of the thinking right now goes that climatic change was really, really harsh on specialists, kind of in the Pleistocene. Pleistocene, I always butcher that one. And humans being more generalist omnivores were able to exploit a broader range of resources. And it didn't help that Neanderthals, while they're shorter than us, they weighed a lot more. So they required, the current number is around 4,500 to 5,000 calories daily, which is a lot harder to support a large group of these guys.
They also had bigger brains, right? Or maybe
they did.
Yeah.
1,500 to 1,700 is the range, I believe. But yeah, it would not have been easy to support a large population of Neanderthals when that climatic change was kind of in its height. Their range was shrinking, and they had to compete with humans. So it just wasn't it wasn't a recipe for success for them. Although it could be argued that, technically they at present were around for longer than Homo sapiens was.
Yeah.
So if you really want to judge by which species is more successful, they've got us beat on longevity for the time being.
Yeah.
Erica, if I may ask a question, I know this isn't your specialty, but do scientists currently know if they ever fought by any chance?
If Neanderthals and humans fought?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the main support for that comes from the fact that we see hybridization.
Yeah.
And while there was, that hybridization living in those hard times was probably a mix of consensual and non-consensual, suggesting that there was some infighting, certainly.
Okay.
And it's just one of those, I find it hard to believe, this is speculation, I don't have anything to support this. I find it hard to believe that humans lived on the planet at the same time as, at least 4 other hominins, and didn't have, brushes of all kinds of interaction, right? Like romantic, friendly, aggressive.
Basically, the world of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's just human nature, hominin nature, I suppose would be a better way of putting it. To be curious about those that look different from you, and sometimes there's a reverence, and sometimes there's a hatred. It just depends.
Right.
It's almost like prejudice is ingrained, kind of, in everything else.
Yeah.
Our speed is asking, should we keep this going? I need to bow out soon. I don't know. I don't mind. I think I'm coming soon too. It's almost it's a little over 11 p.m. for me here. So
yeah, it's 4 p.m. here. So and I've got 2 meetings to get to very shortly. So I need we need to end the stream soon. But you guys are welcome. Unless you want to, do you guys want to keep going, or do you want to go in the back room?
I've got more time these days. I can pop in on another day for sure. So if we want to end it, I got no problem with that.
Sure.
Okay. Well, let's end it and go back room. So,
yep.
Anybody have any last words?
I got nothing.
I mean, can I say the thing?
You can.
Goodbye, cruel world.
Thank you.
Keep being curious. It saves lives.
There you